We have our esteemed and honoured guest with us this evening, SHANA MONGWANGA, who's actually born in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Sister has a master's in political science, international relations. She also has a bachelor's in law. She's a human rights activist and advocate. Also a playwright, performer, short film director. She's made short films on social issues, and they've been selected for the Cannes Film Festival. Sister also has a lineage of activism in the Congo that goes back through her father and grandfather. Anyone familiar with the film Wild Geese? Starring Richard Burton, Richard Harris, Roger Moore? Okay, you're familiar. Yeah, me and you look weird like the older sense. If you are familiar with that film, it was actually loosely based on and inspired by the political activism of SHANA's grandfather and his assassination. So you've actually got a heavyweight champion with you today. So please give her a round of applause. SHANA, so what was your initial thoughts and reactions to what you just saw?
Well, it's interesting work, and I've learned a few things from the LUMUMBA speechwriter, which I never heard about, so that's a first. Well, I would say, first of all, thank you for inviting me as a Congolese woman to be invited to actually speak on this thing is rare, so I'm very, very thankful for that. It was an interesting work. Often, I mean, Lumumba's family are still alive. Some of his kids, some of the people who actually experienced that, and they're just never in any of those films. Polo Kito, Kasavubu's family. So I'm really here speaking from the perspective of my grandfather, which is the first time I'm sort of diving into this work because I'm publishing a play called Congo Independence, which I wrote in 2003, which sort of looks into a family history from the period of the Congolese, just a little bit before the independence, where they were still Belgian, and how they gradually became independent, and then from the Rwanda crisis up to today. So that's really the reason why I've started putting out some of this work, and I think that's why I got contacted. So,
sure.
And I'm not here. My grandfather was, they did what they did, but I'm speaking here from a Londoner, from a Congolese woman, but there's no sort of lineage, whatever thing that you say. Just
no, you have no hidden political agenda. I know.
But looking at things objectively, from a researcher, as well as an academic, as well as being critical from my grandfather, but also Lumumba, and so that's my perspective.
Right, okay. With what we saw historically, and I know there were certain flashpoints to try and link with modern situations of what's going on in the Congo. And there was one point in the film that I found kind of intriguing when you saw the Western propaganda media tool kind of give out the propaganda that, Cubans are in their hotel rooms hunting and eating chickens. Kind of remind me of someone, even in modern times, like, they're eating the cats, they're eating the dogs. So, do you think, with what we saw historically, with the machinations and schemes of the CIA, do you think there are still machinations and schemes going on from the CIA, MI5, MI6 in Congo today, especially what's going on with the war and the exploitation of the mines and the cobalt? Do you think that's still happening today?
Well, there's still uranium in Congo and all of those materials, so it's still a very strategic country. Despite anything we'll say to you, what is happening is the consciousness of Congolese people. As Tshisekedi, Congolese president at the moment, recently said very intelligently to Congolese people, we will always be attacked. We will always be, they will always try. That was before, now it's called out, the rubber. So that is going to be a constant in Congo. It's how we organize ourselves, how we make sure that we educate our population so that they have free access to primary school, secondary school, so that whatever there is, the coup d'etat, whoever is in power, we can still carry on. So this is pretty much the mindset that we're in, and we are always being looked at. I have an art and advocacy sort of platform and media, And for some reason, I love my analytics. For some reason, I always have stuff from NATO looking at my stuff. I mean, I do art, I do plays, and sometimes like unrelated stuff. But you can just see that Congolese, there's still a huge interest in Congo, whatever you do, particularly when you start to speak about crucial things, which I try not to do all the time. Sort of try to do other things and kind of appear like you're not causing any fuss, etc. But we are being looked at as a community very, very often, because when we organize, when Congolese people organize, there's a strong impact. And that's really what is interesting in the film, is that relatively how the Congolese organized very quickly and had their independence very quickly when they all worked together. And how they work together, which is my perspective and the concept of my play, which is they had this groups called, the Belgian created groups called The Evolved, which will be if you can read, write in French, and if you don't practice polygamy, and you kind of appear as a civilized man, so you'll have the status and the education. So Lumumba wasn't involved, my grandfather wasn't involved, so that's how they organized themselves. Like, we're just doing art, and they organized those clubs, social clubs. The people in the Congo, in the Bakongo, Kazavubu party, which actually they were crucial, how they organized. Kazavubu really launched the independence because they got together and they gathered as many people as they could to make it impossible for the Belgians to deny independence. And that's how they worked together. With my grandfather, who was more and more moderate, from Kisangani as well, Elizabeth Ville, sorry, I'm talking a bit too fast because I want to give you as much information as possible. But that's how it really worked. When they work in that way, connecting, and then they started connecting with the Kwame in Ghana. We're going there, they're speaking there, and that's when it went a little bit wrong from the Congolese, because they became this huge international thing, and they became the forefront of everyone's independence in a way. And my opinion is that that's how they lost our Congolese independence. It became Lumumba's figurehead of everyone's sort of that image, but for the Congolese people, we lost a lot, because when they really worked and networked together and okay, we need this one to say that, we need this, what they do at the table ronde, when they all work together. And I know how it works, because when you go to meetings, sometimes we're like, okay, Papa Anthem is going to say this, and I'm going to do this. It's still sort of the similar way that we operate. And so I could see that, and how they went to the table ronde. I'm going to say that, and they all came together. So Lumumba had to come back. So the Belgians could not say no. When they work in that way, they obtain results, and they got it. Things got wrong when, from my perspective, I think Lumumba started to go a little bit hot-headed, and we just lost it. It became this figurehead, and we lost control of our own independence first, before the United States of Africa, because we did not even have that. These were 30-something-year-old people trying to undo colonialism. So, I don't know if I answered your question.
No, you did. Thank you for that. We have our first question for audience member. Gentleman at the back.
That's right. Who wrote this film? Who did this? You?
No, it's a filmmaker. No. It's a Belgian filmmaker, Mr. Grimoz. I think I'm just here as a panelist to sort of answer.
I was going to ask as well. You see, I've got a few Congolese friends, and they said that when they was younger, I'm 39 now, so it was about 5, 6. The same situation was happening. That's why they're over here now. Families got killed. Was it to do the same things?
More or less, because that's happened in the 60s. But then we had 1997 when we had when Mobutu came in. That's the thing that the film doesn't address. It kind of just goes from Lumumba and then that's the end. Whereas there's been other things that happened. General Mobutu came in power, and that was dictatorship for 30 years. And then there's been a crisis with Rwanda and the genocide in Rwanda. I don't know if you heard about that probably. The Rwandan came into Congo in the east of Congo. And because of that, that has destabilized Congo for a great reason now. Rwanda is backed by who? Britain? Rwanda Asylum Bill. So that's really the excuse to get into Congo. Really, little Rwanda has got nothing to offer. But Congo's mineral in that border. So that's why you had lots of Congolese who might have come to Britain, maybe in the Mobutu area or a little bit after that.
So there has been a continuous negative legacy.
Yes,
from
it's
colonialism.
but overall in Congo, in terms of running the country, there's a new president. We stopped the former president to kind of change the constitution and stay there forever because how we organize as in various diaspora in Europe. So we stopped that. So there's a new president who's been there for a second mandate, and things are improving. There's a really good Twitter account when every month there's 1 billion in the country's coffer. This is how. So there's accountability, and people who do any attempt of corruption, it's being reported. So the country, we're trying to work with the wealth that we have. But also, to be clear, we've got minerals, we've got population to feed. So it's sort of okay. Who wants? Where it will be sold, but to the benefit of the Congolese people. So that work is being done. The only sort is the East, with Rwanda, and the UN, which they sort of put in. So these are really the things to look for. And as you can see, it's a continuum.
Okay. Gentleman in the second row.
You think the European powers and the CIA
No, continue. I'm just acknowledging people that are trying to get my attention. So please continue with the system. Ignore me.
You think the European powers and the CIA saw Malcolm X as a threat in regards to creating potentially a black alliance with Patrice Lumumba, knowing that Congo has non-renewable valuable resources to empower the black community. And that's why the CIA could have assassinated Patrice Lumumba as well, because of that potential black alliance between America of Malcolm X and Congo of Patrice Lumumba.
I think it certainly made sense that Lumumba was too overtly against a lot of their interests. Even the speech that he made against the Belgians, I think my grandfather, people around him would have been like, well, we could say that through maybe another person, but if you're representing the country, there was no way Belgium would not have been offended. You see what I mean? So that it made it harder so Lumumba was going to be assassinated in that police. I mean, all of those people who were assassinated, Malcolm X, Robert Kennedy, all those people in there, it didn't even make a huge shock anymore, because it was sort of like, well, he's overtly against us. So how would you have done it? I mean, that's really the question I was trying to answer. What would you have done differently? What if you were in those people's shoes? How
Sorry, just speaking to your point, just real quickly, if you don't mind. Are you familiar with the counterintelligence program?
Yes.
Okay. So anyone in here not familiar with Quenja Pro? Just raise your hands. No, don't be shy. Just raise your hands. Okay. Quenja Pro, real quick. It was a program that was launched under J. Hoover, director of the FBI, and it was a program that was first launched in the 60s. However, the concept of the program existed 20, 30, 40 years prior to that. But it was formulated and budgeted under various different presidents, regardless whether they were Republican or Democrat. Point number one of the counterintelligence program was to cause disunity, infiltrate any, not my term, their term, any organization they consider to be a black nationalistic hate type group, and to cause disunity, their words, now again, not mine, that could bring about a real Mau Mau in America. People familiar with the Mau Mau movement, Kenya?
Yeah.
Right. Warriors, soldiers that rose up to, you from Kenya, sister? Okay. That fought against British colonial rule. Second point on the counterintelligence program, again, their words, not mine, was to find a messiah of the black movement, and they listed a whole heap of individuals who they felt could qualify to be this messiah. Dr. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Stokely Carmichael, who didn't change his name to Kwame Ture, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and others. But point 5 of the counterintelligence program I find really, really interesting, because point 5 states that a final goal a final solution. A what? A final what? Kind of sounds like Nazi Germany, right? A final solution should be to go after, again, their words, not mine, the youth. Specific tactics need to be devised to go after the youth to stop them from being recruited into black organizations. Now that's the US. Over here, there was a gentleman by the name of John Downing, and he was commissioned to write a report regarding racism and the rise of black power movements in the UK, the 70s and 80s. And he found out, and it was a commission report, he then published it in a very small book called Now You Do Know. So please, try and find it if you can. He found that the security service and forces, and I found it to be a really weird, strange term, security forces, that they looked at Northern Ireland and resistant movements in Northern Ireland, and they found out that the community was the power base of resistant movements. And so they realized if they could destabilize the community, they destabilized resistant forces. They looked at how that worked in Northern Ireland, and then they implemented that here in the inner cities where there was a large black populations in London, Manchester, Nottingham, Birmingham. So please do your own research. So to speak into your point, brother, it would seem like, unfortunately, European Western powers have always feared the justice, freedom, equality, and empowerment of what they would consider to be the other. And they've used the might of government to formulate these, that's why I say it's a very weird term, security services, but maybe they should kind of change it to securing Western interest services. Then it would make more sense. But bro, they've always been around, they're still here. I mean, look, a few years ago, it was revealed that it was a special police unit that infiltrated the Stephen Lawrence campaign to try and steer it down a different route. And I'll sharp in this 1 minute. Sorry if I'm going on a bit. I think I've got my Hyde Park corner bit now. Just one last point. If you're kind of wondering why is it people always talking about black gangs in the neighbourhood, look, if you go all the way back to the very late 80s, very early 90s, there was an operation that was launched at the Home Office and Scotland Yard, where they went over to Jamaica to recruit what was called the Gully Man, Yardies from Jamaica, to infiltrate the Yardie gangs here. Yeah? There was only one problem with that. There were no Yardie gangs here. The people that they recruited from Jamaica were given a budget, immunity, that they could practice selling crack cocaine with impunity, thinking that, okay, we can find other informants that are dealing with the Yardie gangs within London and Nottingham and Manchester. The Home Office then claimed they lost track of these Jamaican informants, even though if you go to places like Brixton, Peckham, even Newham, everyone knew who they were and where they were. But all of a sudden, the Home Office lost track, we don't know where they are. And then from there, you had Operation Trident, and then all of a sudden, you had now gangs in the black community. To cut a long story short, as far as I'm concerned, either that was one of the worst cases of incompetence regarding a police and government operation on the African and Afro-Caribbean community, or it was done by design. I'll let you make up your mind on that. Over to who was next with a question. Thank you, sir.
In your view, to what extent is Belgium specifically still involved in?
Well, there is officially it's kind of like nothing really happening, but I know that a few years ago there was a BBC documentary about the rubber blood in Congo and stuff like that. The embassy issued a statement, which is still on their website, stating that the Congolese tribes had the custom of cutting people's hands when they're still, and that's why the Belgians emphasized that. So the damage has been done so much because we know the practices that they were, despite what the king tried to do during the independence and kind of turn it into, we were preparing for this day forever. It's just been, but Belgium is a 10 million country, 10 billion population. So it's really the people kind of pulling the strings around Belgium and all the power around that. But officially, it's just, lots of Congolese living in Belgium as well. It's a lot of sort of peaceful. I've got lots of people in my family who are Belgian. Belgians of like European Belgian. Because the image has been, it's up there. You cannot hide around. Even this new generation knows about the rubber in Congo and stuff like what they did. So, but that's what it's interesting for me too. This film from a Belgian filmmaker and kind of like, I'm always very suspicious of everything around Congo. Right? So you talk about infiltration and stuff like that. We go to talk to do stuff, and we have that one student is always there from Belgium or from whatever country. How do you travel here? How do you just track us all the time? How do you? And then she starts talking to our aunties and mummies, and they'll just spill everything because they think this is a friendly Belgian person just talking to us. It's a constant. I met with Denis Mukwege, who did Nobel Peace Prize. We met quite a lot before he had his Nobel Peace Prize, and we were kind of networking and kind of trying to get the word out of what was happening in the East. And when he started building up his profile, we'll go to this event, and there was this Belgian guy. I wanted to sit next to Dr. Mukwege, the Belgian that came in and kind of just pushed me and kind of sat there. It's sort of like they control everything. And then we asked Dr. Mukwege, well, what is this guy? Like, we can't even speak to you without him like shadowing the Belgian, sort of stuck me, that guy. I cannot go anywhere. So it was so visible and kind of like, I'm like, even I did not expect that, to see the Belgian hand still. They're officially not, but when you kind of go to this sort of event and you kind of see, it's still there. And the infiltration process within communities, it's still there. It's still there, and you just have to be aware of it and just be smart about it. And I would say, don't get hot-headed. I used to be hot-headed because I'll be like, what are you doing here? What's your PhD thesis? Why are you? And then I will be kind of in my LUMUMBA way, kind of like this. And it'll be like, no, Shana, you have to. So I had to grow into that, kind of learning. This is someone they sent to get rid of this person, so that this person would be discouraged to be doing that. Just breathe, ignore them. So you kind of learn skills to kind of deal, because they will always, if that one goes away, someone else will send someone else. So you have, as a community, how do you organize yourself and still move forward as a community and be aware of that?
Thank you. Young lady, I'll see.
You kind of answered my question a little bit, but I was going to ask, like, in light of the obviously continued surveillance in the community and in the diaspora, and where we've seen lots of like small grassroots activists and groups protesting and organising over the last year, and then it just dissipates. Do you think that this is responsible by state actors that we see, and how would you continue to, or what would you advise people to overcome this and to continue and make these bigger, so that we're getting to the level where we're getting the visibility like with the Palestine protests?
I think there's a double sword that's happened here, is that some of the communities have been really good at organizing and having their voices heard. Like, we get lots of tips from other communities as well in Latin America. So the Congolese organize very effectively diasporas in Belgium, in Japan, and to the level that they could not change the constitution and have that guy stay for it. So it was very efficient. And now it's sort of like being embraced. Like, let's get those people to, and it becomes, and it sort of defeats the purpose in a way that, like the mobile phone thing, everyone knows that it's Coltar is coming from Congo. Nobody cares. It's sort of been deflated. I don't know what has happened. It became, it's been embraced so much that it just became this thing that it lost the impact. It's not organic anymore. So we're probably going to find ways to make it more organic and more impactful, as opposed to this thing that it's become, everyone demonstrates about anything all the time and on social media, but it's like, is it impactful? And who, I think it's being infiltrated a lot, and it's kind of just being dissolved about so many other things that it lost its focus. That's my opinion. Like, whereas from our Congolese demonstration, we had the guy, we cannot change the constitution. So everyone, regardless of your opinion, We got together on that one issue. We focus on that, not other things. Like we do have many, many other issues all the time, and that's often where the distraction comes in. It's like, oh, but we have to speak about this other group too. We have to be, and then you get diverted, and then you get divided, and then you don't focus on the task ahead, and you lose the track of that. So finish the job, have that clear focus. I know it's hard because there's so many things. I think that's what I will get from my experience.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I just wanted to ask in your personal experience and looking at the film, if there was anything, any content inside it that maybe you didn't agree with, or just had a gripe with, or maybe elements of the film that you felt like was too pushed to the forefront when it could have been something different?
I think I'll say it's a good start as a conversation, but I would invite everyone to read the full Congolese journey, because there's a huge chunk that's just not been there. I think it's from a certain perspective only, and if you're presenting the Westerners as evil, there's also the Eastern side that's not being angelic either, because after Lumumba's assassination in January '61, what has happened after is that there's the lady saying she's a Lumumba's rebel. Those are the people who killed my grandfather, cut his heart open in the middle of the place and ate it. So, which is not in the film. So you can see how you have to present the full story of Congo so that people can see what has actually happened and how and make up their minds from that. But if you miss that huge chunk, because the SIMBA rebels were financed by China and the Soviet Union. They were trained, the arms were there, and they were far more brutal. From my perspective, also that's why Lumumba was rejected. Also, he's not revered. He's revered and respected as a Congolese person who sacrificed his life in all that. But not from the. I'm often shocked when I go to Harlem, like Lumumba. It's like, yes, there's a respect for that, but within the Congolese, because there's been the SIMBA rebel movement, because they tried to get the eastern part of the country, which is similar to what is happening now during the war. So to divide the country, they proclaim an independence. So financed by the Soviet Union and all that. So they're all the same. They've been playing the same game when they had the opportunity. The violence was so cruel that's why it gave way to Mobutu. So we could not recover. They're all coming from different sides to try to make their point on the Congolese woman's body. And I would say from my grandfather's perspective, so this is the story that I have, which allows me perhaps to see things from a different perspective, but from all Congolese people. So it's not black and white in that way that, they just wanted, that Khrushchev really just wanted the independence of the free bull. Because they also have interest. They would also like that uranium and all that. So that's what I would be careful about, and just sort of it's mixed up with the dates. Sometimes it goes back before. I would have liked just to continue, just to make it the clarity, and I think that makes it harder for people to actually fully take one side when they can see the events as it happened clearly and hearing from all the sides. And I would like to hear about Lumumba's family, Lumumba's close people. You cannot do a film about Lumumba and not speak about these people. That's really infuriating me now, actually. So, yeah.
Thank you. Brother in the cat.
So, first thing, when you're talking about infiltration, there's a good book called The Infiltrators, which covers what you were talking about and stuff like that. There's also a good documentary, a Storyville documentary, BBC stuff, which covers this as well. So, and it doesn't cover a lot of the Khrushchev stuff, so this was quite new to me. One of the, I think, from this film, one of the most powerful bits for me in there, from a musical perspective, was when they showed Coltrane blowing his piece in silence. So they did it before, then it was silent, because you can see the sort of pain. And same with Abbey Lincoln and Starbanky and all those others. What I wanted to ask was does anybody, do any of you know how Louis Armstrong's visit was received by the local people? And the reason I ask that is because because one, his response to it after he finished, and second, if we think about years later in the 70s, the Rumble in the Jungle, when they had a load of artists with them, and but outside of the artists, George Foreman turned up in his dog. His dog was a Belgian Alsatian, and the local people took exception to that because of the Belgian army used to have those dogs and set them on the people. And that, so do you have any idea, does anyone have any idea of how Louis Armstrong's visit was perceived by them?
Well, that's the interesting bit. I learned lots of those sort of anecdotes. I didn't even know. I didn't even know about that, so that's really interesting. I think that's something from the mainly for the American audience, because I don't really. I think the Congolese were into their Rumbas and stuff. I think they were far more interesting in their own country and their future, particularly in November 1964 no 61. All those turbulences going on, it would have been like a PR thing. Like, it looks like there's all those people coming in. I never came across that fact. So in reading the Congolese books that I have prepared, doing research and stuff like that. So that's an interesting thing. But I don't even think that I've never heard any Congolese person saying they were a fan of those American bands, which is nice. But at the same time, if you think about it, like, the music that we had was cha-cha and stuff, and our local musician, which is really great music. And so it's interesting, but you need a radio to listen to. So only a certain class of people would have been. So this was very much for the elite, the évolué that they've trained to kind of make them feel special. But because the common Congolese person would probably would not have access to that sort of music and stuff like that, like to be able to enjoy it fully. So I think I also need to research that, which I will do.
Just throwing it back out to yourself, bro. In modern times, I mean, do you think there's a lack of involvement from modern day artists, considering that, and I don't think this could be argued, that considering that various forms of black music is the leading form of genres of music across the globe, be it hip-hop, be it reggae, be it soul. So do you think there's a lack of involvement and commitment from artists today in using their music for cultural, political revolution?
I think you have to listen to the music because a lot of it is there, but it gets overshadowed by a lot of the popular stuff. So, for example, a friend of mine would say that hip-hop is this and hip-hop is that and it's rubbish and all that kind of thing. But I say to him, you have to listen to it because there are a lot of people who are politically aware. They're just not being heard.
But what about the artists formulating relationships with leaders? Because there seems to be a lack of that, whereas in the 60s and 70s, you can see the artists and leaders converging together.
And I think it's just a consequence of the times.
Okay.
It's like if we look back 50s, 60s, there were a lot of people stepping forward to represent people, and there was a lot of there just seemed to be people just, it was the beginning of a lot of awareness from them. Okay. So it was reflected in a lot of the music, the American music, particularly jazz and soul music and stuff. To come back now, it's, a lot of that gets suppressed.
But I would say it was genuine as well. It was more genuine. When Ali and all of those people connected, there was a genuine interest. And I'm mentioning these two, but I don't really care much for that. Well, Jay-Z and Obama, when he started his first campaign, they were BFF. And then he said afterwards, I never heard from him again. And it kind of just fizzled out. But you had that real powerful thing, and it all got, black Americans. And then was it based on anything genuine, like real concern for the black American population? I don't know. I doubt it. But you see, it's become this sort of, if it happened, it becomes this sort of a collab thing, like for social media, but the genuine care for the people and with a vision, which is something that I think that we're completely lacking, even in black America, a vision for our community. These guys, they had vision for their community. This is where we're heading. Martin Luther King's speech, I have a dream. That's really, it's like setting up a roadmap. We don't have that vision anymore. We kind of like on the day-to-day, but like on Instagram, and we're lacking the vision. Where that makes it harder for people to come together for a common vision and kind of like achieve something.
Well, in regards, because the Congo is such a huge country. I mean, like, how is it politically set up and run at the moment? Because it's it's a country that's the size of Europe. So how is it actually politically pulling together? Is there a unified sense of purpose in the country generally as a country working, as it were? Going back to what you were saying about the country perhaps being very divisive and various elements within the country pulling against one another. How is that actually now coming together to actually sort of, as it were? But it seems to be that, as you were talking earlier, you were sort of like saying there's all these influences, be it China, be it Russia. But again, it seems to me the classic example of divide and rule, which is still going on in the Congo. And how is the Congolese people pushing back against that kind of like narrative that's been in place for so long?
Yeah, well, first of all, we push back the diaspora, the fact that lots of people have to exile in those European countries where we have a right to vote, and kind of like when we organize and we can get other communities to sort of help us. That has really happened. It really became like a weapon for us. And we're not voting for you if you're involved in that. We're not sending our kids to school because you're covering that dictator over there. So that has helped in terms of a leverage from people in the diaspora. Congo at the moment, there have been constitutional reforms, so the country has been reorganized in terms of community, local provinces, so that there's more of the democratic process is happening much more in local communities as well at the province level, so that in turn the federal state is, so there's a better keeping an eye on what's happening in the provinces and listening to the people's voice in the ground. So that's a process that's been really positive, and the Senate, so they've recreated a Senate and a House of Commons type of thing, which was completely banned. So it's been rebuilding, and as I said, you can really follow up the democratic process in Congo as it happened in most of those provinces. Most of them have got a Twitter account in the region, in Lisala, where my father was from, and I can kind of follow what's happening in there. They're having local communities, so you can follow that and it's big, and we've had that before as well. Oh, it's too big, just divide it up and give a little bit to run. That's not happening. It is big, but it is manageable. The tribe, we know which tribes have been there, so it is manageable. China is big as well, and it's still one.
They have a common language, don't they?
Pardon?
They have a common
We
language.
also have a common language. We have, which I speak, Swahili, Kikongo, Lingala, Chiluba. So these are the four main languages. And then you have about 1,000 language, like tribal language, but everyone can understand any of the other language. So that's the thing. Like it's the thing of having just one language, like they did in France, and kind of cut off all the other local language. That's not going to happen in Africa, anywhere in Africa, because the tribe where we come from the people from specific tribe who have maintained, despite it all, still their tribe. I can go back to Lisala today. They'll tell me, your name is Mongwanga. You are from there, without any written books. So this is not something you can destroy. And that doesn't mean that you're not. There's also different languages in other societies, but because they chose to kind of destroy it and make it like, whoa, we work because we've got one language, one religion, that's bull. We are perfectly able to, a country is perfectly able to organize itself so long as it has a common goal. So long as it's decided, okay, you've made up this country of all of this tribe, okay, now we're keeping it as it is. And that's the work that has been done with Congo, and all those Congolese, our forefathers, etc. So I hope I wasn't too aggressive in answering your question.
No.
But hopefully it sort of explains that. But do follow the Twitter account of the Congolese, Congolese press agency, because they are really good at reporting anything, and it kind of sort of can keep an eye of what's happening. So you don't have just that thing, oh, there's been killing in the east. That's not the only thing happening in Congo.
No, thanks. Fantastic film. Which is the reason I came. It's interesting that I think it's China. Am I correct?
Sorry?
Your guess, your name?
Shana.
Yeah, that you have so much belief in the democracy in Congo and the culture to be able to hold the country as it is, that was formed by, the king of Belgium. But my interest was the film, in that I thought the film was brilliant. It was really well made. I'm a filmmaker, so that's how I'm looking at it. And it was extremely dense. I knew and had a good understanding of the broad strokes of that period, but there were lots of details from books, from the UN speeches, from perspectives shown just by the soundtrack that spoke on lots and lots of levels, very deep and dense in that respect. So I admire the film. It didn't matter to me who made it. At the end of the day, I tried to understand what it's trying to say to me. And effectively, it was speaking about, for me, America as the empire of evil, which ultimately anybody who's been living any kind of length of time will know that that's the truth. And it tried to also tell the viewer, in my view, that there's an immense fear of a black planet. And that's a very broad statement, but those who know what I'm saying when I say that. And that's why this film is important for me. And it should stand alongside Raoul Peck's film about LUMUMBA, because this film isn't just about LUMUMBA, and it's about that moment of the coup and the kind of politics leading up to it, and it wasn't necessarily about Congo, so I didn't read it in that way. It just had to give you context from which this film stood. That's essentially what I want to say.
Thank you. Got time for 3 quick questions, so it's going to be 2 young ladies in the front and the young lady third row back. Sorry, that's all we're going to have time for. So I can't remember who had their hand up first.
Mine's a very quick question. So I love this film, but clearly, like you say, there's gaps. I'd be really interested in, is there one book for a lay person that you recommend? And obviously you're academic, so you read lots of sources. Is there one that's worth looking at?
I would say start with a general search and kind of just to have a sense of the time period we're in, and then focus on, if you're going to look at LUMUMBA, that would be pretty much the perspective you'll have on LUMUMBA.
But all of it, I mean, the dictatorship, what's happening now, I think.
I think there isn't one book that I can specifically pinpoint. Lots of, I would say, more documentary.
Yeah.
If you could look at documentary, there's really good Belgian documentary actually, where the footage, most of the footage I've seen before, because it's coming from other sources. And there's a really good Belgian documentary, which I can't remember the name. There's Léopold Roi du Zaïre, for instance, so, which will give you something about the Mobutu era, but it kind of explains everything beforehand. Documentary around Mobutu are actually really interesting because it goes back into the Lumumba era, how it came to power. So it explains a bit more in details about how they organized the coup and all of that. So that would be really interesting. Anything written by Congolese authors are really interesting because you'll have more details of a different perspective, I would say. Well, I'll just not in my play. The play that I'm actually publishing, which is called Congo Independence, which will be about how they were just before, during the independence, just before the independence, and some people had a great time, some people that I've got a job with, and how. So that gives you a different perspective as well, because it's coming from a Congolese day-to-day life perspective and how it all happened with the political context and all that. But pretty much what you've seen there, it's the narrative that you'll see in any other documentary. So that's why maybe for me, I was looking at it from a different lens, because most of the elements are sort of new, except but to the gentleman, I agree, it's a very interesting film. In an art form, it's a very interesting film. It's a bit difficult for me, maybe from an academic perspective, but absolutely as a work of art, I think it's going to go to various other festivals. So it's a really good film in terms of an entry point to kind of wanting to know more about Congo.
So my question has been partly answered. Basically, it was around the music, and I just wanted to know whether in your current work, I think you mentioned a little bit, in your current work, whether you see the impact of jazz or whatever work you're doing, like in this period. But also I wanted to just make a comment around, I think the film almost can be anywhere. So I'm thinking about some of the stuff that's happened in Nigeria, in Zimbabwe, in South Africa. And I think that's really interesting because the history is so similar, and even someone made a comment about the language. If you think about South Africa, for example, I think they have 11 official languages, but it is that one country, but no one is saying it needs to be separated. But then they'll go to a different country and try and approach it in a different way.
In terms of the music, not particularly, as I say, Congolese are very much music, but also because we had the Cubans coming in, which was not explored as well in the film, when Lumumba died, and then they came in. That's the time when Che Guevara came in and tried to get Congolese to, and then lots of the Cubans that went, but also Cubans, black Cubans, because they would look like Congolese and they would not look like it's a foreign country coming to it. So they went back to Cuba and they kept the Congolese music, and then you have the and that was the interesting thing that the filmmaker also says. So you have this link with the Cuban music, sort of going back and forth, that influences from which is still there. Also, the music is part of Congolese, and that's maybe why he made the film Everyday Life. Like, we are rhythm by the music is so important, and at the same time there was very little of it. But I think I'm getting the point that maybe this is a film beyond just Congo. As I said, Lumumba is that figurehead of above Congo, so it's not really, so it becomes something else for so many other people, and that's a great thing as well. I'm interested in the Congo, but because, and that's also an interesting thing as well. But the music in itself, the Congolese music will be more prevalent, and kind of like how, but absolutely, and music has been used as a propaganda tool in Congolese politics throughout.
Thank you. Empress, you got the last question.
Okay, I just wanted to ask, what became of the man who took the sword and then was using the police?
I know, right?
What became of him? And who was he as well?
I've heard about that and it's on footage, but I've not, that's a really good question. I'm going to trace that back and trying to find out. Because that's also part of the work that I'm trying to do, to encourage Congolese people and all of them to write. You can self-publish. Write those testimonies so that we know about how it actually happened. But that was a powerful thing, because it's sort of like, sometimes Lumumba made this speech, but it's like, as a Congolese person, I'll show you something powerful that's going to last for generations. I'll take your sword, simple as that. And that's a way in a tribal culture, sort of, I'm breaking your power, so we're taking that power back. That's all it needed. And that's been very powerful. But I will definitely be looking into that, hopefully find something a bit more on that.
Thank you.
So we don't know what his name was, because I remember before he took it, they actually took a picture. They zoomed into him as he was walking along the carriage, running along the carriage.
Yeah. I'm sure it's traceable. Because it's like just never. Which is really my thing, is that there are still so many people alive and kind of being able to testify on that, and we are losing that. And it's just that one version of the thing. But absolutely, I think I'll try to change that person.
Thank you. So, can we please give SHANA another round of applause? And keep it going. So we give her a round of applause, please. Can we also give the New Black Film Collective a round of applause? Miriam and Veronica, and Philip's not here. Can we give Ruth a round of applause? It's in the back. And Block for hosting us this evening. And Trevor! And can we give your biggest round of applause to yourselves for coming out this evening? And like I said last week, look, if there is any MI5 or MI6 here, please give them a round of applause for showing up. But make sure you report back accurately to your taskmaster. So thank you, everyone.